Amazing. Welcome to yet another episode of International Forum. I am Philip Omo Gyupo, and we will be looking at the Israel and Hezbollah conflict. And we take a retrospect back in May. Amos Hochstein, U.S. President Joe Biden's point man for keeping a lead on tensions between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, spoke in a webinar, and he said, what I worry, in quotes, he said, what I worry over every day is that a miscalculation or an accident hits a bus full of children or hits another kind of civilian target that could force the political system in either country to retaliate in a way that slides us into war, even though both sides probably understand that a fuller or deeper scale war is in neither side's interest. Now, the equivalent of that bus came on Saturday evening last week in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, and a rocket which Israel says was launched by Hezbollah from Sheba in the southern Lebanon slammed into a soccer pitch in the droves town of Magdal Shams, and 12 children ranging in the age from 10 to 16 were killed while taking part in a training session. A sad story, you may say. And Hezbollah has denied responsibility for that strike anyways. But will Hochstein's fear of a fuller-scale war now also come to pass? Looking at what we have in the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah that has dated back to October 7 when an attack was launched by Hamas on Israel. Well, discussing this with me from my extreme left, I have a lecturer in the University of Benin, Honorable Frank Amego. Thanks for joining me, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
And next to Honorable Frank Amego is another lecturer, a political scientist from the Department of Political Science, Neville Obakedo. Thanks for joining, Neville.
Thank you for having me, ITV. Good afternoon, viewers and listeners at home.
All right. Well, it's always awesome to know the other side, the political scientist view, to it. You've been following the stories of Israel and Hezbollah conflict. And just recently, we had this blow of the rocket that was launched and hitting the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, that killed 12 children ranging from 10 to 16 years. Now, Israel has promised to retaliate in full force. What do you make of this for Israel? Because we're beginning to see much on Israel having too much on his hands over issues surrounding, as regards enemies surrounding Israel. So what do you make of this for Israel, looking at the Hezbollah conflict?
Well, I feel for Israel, or the Jewish state of Israel, because as descendants of Abraham, Israel as a nation state is surrounded by equal children of Abraham, but they are aimed at annihilating Israel. Anytime we talk about Arab-Israel conflict, Israel-Hamas conflict, Israel-Hezbollah conflict, Israel-Lebanon conflict, Israel-Syria conflict, Israel-Iran conflict, or Israel-Iraq conflict, as the case may be, what comes to mind is anti-Semitism. That's anti the Zionist state. And you can look at it from 3 different angles. As a Christian, you can look at it from the biblical perspective, that what is happening to Israel have already been foretold, and these very happenings of recent time can be captured in the eschatology of biblical studies. That is to say, the things that will happen in the last day towards the end of the world. That is that. You can also look at it from the point of view of justice and injustice, starting from the wars, the Napoleonic Wars that led to the dissolution of the state of Israel then, which was later reconstituted in 1948 after the Second World War. And how, according to the Arab nations surrounding Israel, their territories were now given to Israel. One of the territories that is in dispute between Israel and Lebanon and Syria in the context of the Israel-Hezbollah crisis is this Golan Heights. We are still going to talk about the Golan Heights. But residents of Golan Heights are the Druze people they are Arabs, and they are Arab speaking.
Yeah.
And they cut across Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and one other country, about 4 countries there.
Like in border towns.
Yes. Now, the population of the Israelites there is about 25,000. And there are settlements of the Israelis. Whereas the Druze people that are there, about 20,000, they are there on their own volition. When others were being forcefully evacuated, they decided to remain. And on the Lebanese border, you have HEZBOLLAH providing security. On the Syria border, you have the Syrian forces and HEZBOLLAH providing security. On the Israeli border,
yeah,
you have Israeli defense forces providing security, 24-hour security. And one way HEZBOLLAH believe that they can pass a message to Israel to grant some forms of concession is by threatening the interests of Israel in the Golan Heights. This is not the first time. As the discussion progresses, I will give you instances of how HEZBOLLAH has challenged Israel in the Golan Heights.
Okay.
Apart from other terrorist activities that HEZBOLLAH has used to target Israel.
Okay. Now,
when we talk about HEZBOLLAH, what comes to my mind is kamikaze, what the Japanese people call kamikaze after during the Second World War, when America dropped atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That kind of catastrophic destruction has never been seen by Japan, even in their imperialistic expeditions, that they use their language to describe it as kamikaze. Anytime HEZBOLLAH, Hamas comes up for discussion, even though we can look at their own argument from the point of view of injustice from Israel, what comes to mind is kamikaze, or what we can call gruesome macabre. So, as we speak on the Israeli-HEZBOLLAH conflict, because Hamas and HEZBOLLAH, they work together, I believe that their attack on Israel is to weaken the capacity of Israel to react to conflict, especially externally induced conflict, because they believe that Israel cannot be fighting Hamas on one side through Gaza and be fighting HEZBOLLAH through Golan Heights or some part of southern Lebanon. But they are mistaken. Most of the people that are spearheading this conflict were maybe toddlers during the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, what has been described as the Yom Kippur War. It was a 7-day war because all the Arab nations gang up against Israel, and they believed that it was an attempt to liquidate Israel and silence Israel forever. But they were surprised at the retaliation of Israel to all the fronts, all the war fronts. I believe that Israel is even more sophisticated now, and with the support that they are getting from the West.
Okay.
So as the discussion progresses, I will be able to point some specific aspects of this conflict and what it portends for both HEZBOLLAH and Lebanon, because HEZBOLLAH is a political party in Lebanon. That political party that has a military wing. The military wing is the Jihad Council, while the political wing is resistance, Islamic resistance political party.
Okay.
Now, what it portends is that it is likely going to ignite Israel-Lebanese war, and right now is going to change the climate of opinion in Israel. But Israeli forces, when they know that the battle for the survival of Israel is the battle for their own survival, they are going to behave like the Spartan soldiers or the Athenian soldiers of the days of Solon.
All right, thank you. Why Netanyahu is still saying that he's going to make sure that there's a retaliation from Israel? HEZBOLLAH has denied wrongdoing in that Golan Heights, where the 12 children having the age between 10 to 16 were feared killed. What HEZBOLLAH said was that it targeted it's the military areas, you know, at the Golan Heights, and it wasn't intended on the children. So it denied wrongdoing on that. So what do you make of this denial by Hezbollah?
Yes, for Hezbollah to deny is a direction to the fact that it was an accident. And to allay the fear of my colleague here, it will lead to any war. Because Israel is grappling with so many things, especially the Gaza Strip, trying to handle Hamas. And Hamas from Palestine, while Hezbollah from southern Lebanon.
Yeah.
So since Hezbollah has said, has denied it outrightly, it shows respect. Even if they really did, I'm sure they did, because the investigation so far, the rocket that was shot, they discovered that it was made in Iran. Of course, Hezbollah and Iran, they have religious or some strategic relationships. So if Israel decides to go out on a full-scale war, they might end up attracting the attention of Iran. So the consequences...
Because Iran is backing Hezbollah and Hamas.
Yes, the consequences will be uncontrollable, will be unpredictable. So Israel is not ready for any war. I like the fact that Hezbollah denied it. If they had owned up, it's like telling Israel, what can you do? Why I also accept the fact that it was an accident, because there was no provocation from any direction at that very moment that the rocket was prepared. And if they really intended it to hit a particular target, it shouldn't be children playing football. 12 died, 30 injured, like it's a wasted effort. So I don't see it escalating.
Okay.
I don't see it escalating. If Benjamin Netanyahu made such a statement that he will fight back, he would have said that out of anger. I'm sure we would have settled down, we will calculate all what it takes to fight Hamas and to fight Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not a country. As you rightly said a while ago, it's a political party whereby Hezbollah is the military wing of it. So I want to classify Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist groups, because it don't mean well for any nation. The Lebanese government has made a statement. They regretted what happened. That shows that the government of Lebanon is not in support of what happened. Even in some other Western countries, they condemned it in totality. So, but the good thing I can extrapolate from what happened now is that there will be no war after now.
Okay.
There will be no war. And the implication of that is they will have a way of settling themselves out to the point that if there are ways to pay back the damages they did, then either Hezbollah or Lebanon should pay Israel back.
Okay, let's get your reactions, Neville, because this has been going on. It's not just fresh. We'll look at the Hamas attack on Israel, and a few days later, we had issues about Hezbollah and the Israeli conflict. So do you concur with what Honorable Frank said, that it may not lead to war? Because as what we can see here, even though the Hezbollah group is saying that they did not drop that, but it could also mean that it was an accident, being that they targeted, according to them, you know, they had military targets at the Golan Heights, but it could be accidental to have dropped at the soccer pitch that killed the 12 children, making, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu to say that Israel will retaliate full scale.
Okay, let me react this way by saying that we need to understand what Hezbollah as a group stands for. It was an attempt to participate in the politics of Lebanon that Hezbollah now had a political wing, which they call Islamic Resistance Party. Then they have a military wing, which was the original reason for establishing it, which is the Jihad Council. So Hezbollah is like the African National Congress that had the political wing and they had the military wing they call Ukoto Wesizwe. Now, let's go back again to go and look at the ideology of Hezbollah. The ideology of Hezbollah is pan-Islamism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Zionism.
Wow.
They are also anti-West and anti-imperialism and anti-LGBT.
They are always
several anti.
Can you imagine
that is part of
always
Hezbollah.
opposing?
Now, the question is, why was Hezbollah constituted in the first instance?
Exactly.
In 1979, the Ayatollahs in Iran, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, Ayatollah Ali Muntazeri, and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the present spiritual leader of Iran, they embark on what they refer to as Islamic revolution to dethrone the elected government of Iran at that time. That was when Jimmy Carter was president of America. Now, what was the purpose of establishing Hezbollah? Hezbollah was to act like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard that led the revolution in Iran, to also lead the revolution in Lebanon and make Lebanon to be an Islamic state. You are aware that Lebanon is a country that have almost equal population of Muslims and Christians. So it's like it's a secular state. But on the basis of indoctrination and psychological lobotomization of some elements in Lebanon, they decide to toe the line of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Part of their philosophy is Khomeinism, that is subscribing to the idea and philosophy of Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, one thing that is paramount in the agenda is the annihilation, the wiping out of the surface of the earth that nation state they call Israel. If Hezbollah is aimed at wiping out Israel, in line with Hamas and some other groups, now any action that they take is aimed at either perpetrating that annihilation or sending a message to Israel that all is not well with Israel and Israel's interest around the world. This is not the first time that Hezbollah is doing something that is touching the soul of Israel. I will give you some points. In 2011, there was an attack in Istanbul, in Turkey. The attack was carried out by Hezbollah. They wanted to assassinate the Israeli consul in Istanbul. They did not succeed, but some persons were injured. Before then, in 2010, there is a field that is inside Israel in the west part of Haifa. That field is a gas field. They just discovered gas there.
Wow.
Do you know what Hezbollah did? Hezbollah said because that Haifa is close to Lebanon, that Israel should not go and be tapping the resources there, that place belonged to Lebanon. Then, in 2012, tourists from Israel were going to Cyprus. They had already gone to Cyprus. Hezbollah sent their suicide bombers to Cyprus to go and get those persons eliminated. In one of the years, I cannot remember the particular year now, in Bulgaria, some tourists from Israel went to Bulgaria for tourist activities. Hezbollah sent people to that place to go and get them assassinated. The point I'm trying to make is that Hezbollah has as one of its agenda elimination of Israel. And so if they cannot eliminate Israel, as Israel is presently constituted, they try to target the interests of Israel, whether in Israel or anywhere that interest is around the world. So targeting young people who were playing football in part of the settlement that belonged to Israel, the Golan Heights, in the name of trying to attack military personnel that belong to Israel. And they are now saying, I'm not the one. because you know that the consequences will be too great for you to bear. Is a manifestation of lily-liveredness. I tell you the truth. The Benjamin Netanyahu that I know shall surely retaliate against HEZBOLLAH, and the consequences of that retaliation will take HEZBOLLAH some years to recover from.
We don't know what's happening, but looking at the drone that really intercepted much of the rockets that were launched, the missiles that were launched, but for the accidental ones that dropped in the soccer pitch. And again, Israel seems to be surrounded by enemies. We have the Iran, of course, who is basically supporting Hezbollah and Hamas. We have the trouble that Israel has with Hamas. You know, that war is still ongoing in Gaza. And do you see Israel, you know, being able to survive this stretch? Because it seems to be engulfed by all of those crises, attacking this, attacking that. Do you see the survival of Israel if it goes through this length, like what David Obakedo said?
Israel will surely survive. Right from Bible days, in Psalm 23, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies.
Do they believe that?
They sure do. So Israel...
Is Netanyahu a Christian?
We'll address that in subsequent editions. God's own country, Israel, it wasn't a mistake to be in the midst of those enemies. And I tell you for free that God is behind Israel for everything. So one will expect all these centuries, all these years, that none of these countries could really demonstrate superiority in terms of military hardware and all that against the capacity of Israel. So that's number one. Number two, as I earlier said, it's not going to degenerate. It won't. Because it has its own immediate consequences that at the moment, those consequences are unpredictable.
When you say it's not going to degenerate, you mean the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel?
Yes.
Despite the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that
it would have said
there's going to be a retaliation.
It would have said
in
so.
Full scale.
He who fights and runs away truly has run for his dear life. He's not going to come back to fight. It was a presidential way of expressing his sadness. These innocent young children, 10 to 16 years old, promising, maybe one of them would have been the best footballer in the world in the years to come, cut off like that forever. So the statement the Prime Minister made was the right thing to say. He wouldn't have applauded Hezbollah. More so, they denied. That denial, I'm so interested in that denial. That denial shows, even if we meant to do it, but we are sorry. A lot of things are loaded in that statement that it didn't come from them. But what if they have said they did it? They one would have been able to extrapolate that what will come out.
But don't forget, this is a group that is being supported by Iran,
yes,
which is an enemy.
The more reason that Israel may not want to escalate it.
For diplomatic reasons?
Yes, yes. If you want to fight Hezbollah, for instance, you have to find out the people you're going to fight ultimately to be Iran, ultimately. And Israel has so much to bite and so much to chew. And they're trying to...
So what you are saying is that Israel will be considering its survival not to be overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed in the first instance, because right now they are trying to wind up...
You said that they can't be overwhelmed.
They can't be because it's God's country. They are calculating. If you look at the law of Israel, the constitution they uphold, you cannot just unilaterally say we're going to launch a full-scale attack on Hezbollah. You have to face the parliament. You have to discuss it. It's not a one-off thing that I have decided. They have a constitution they are abiding by. So it's not for Benjamin Netanyahu to say before press that this thing will not just end like this. It has to go through parliament. They will have to all agree. But from my assessment of Israel, it may not be. That's why I kept on saying that the consequences are unpredictable and are also uncontrollable. Because it happens at times. You have a button, your shirt. You see one end dragging out. If you are not careful, attempt to cut it, the whole thread will lose out and the button falls off.
And you're in for it.
You're in for it. And he did plan to go to that extent. So it was condemned by several nations. That in a way will calm the nerves of Israel to say, don't go. In the first instance, I don't see it as a conflict. It becomes a conflict if the attacking force agreed that we did. They said they did not. Between a father and a mother and a child.
They said they did not, but that they were on military targets in Israeli occupied Golan Heights.
Yes.
Don't forget that. So which means they are still the enemies of Israel.
Altogether,
and they already made targets on Israel.
Put together, they've denied.
They denied that dropping on the children.
It's a sign of respect.
On the soccer pitch.
It's a sign of...
could it be political that they just don't want to get the annoyance or vengeance of the world humanitarian body because children are involved? We have 12 children.
Yes.
You know, between the age of 10 and 16.
30 others.
So could that be a calculated reason?
It's possible.
To throw that
It's
into
possible. I was trying to give an analogy. If between the mother and the child, the mother asks the child, who stole any piece of meat from this pot of soup? And the child says, he's not the one.
Okay.
That shows a sign of respect. But if that child says, I did, in other words, what can you do? So for HEZBOLLAH to say they did not, even with the glaring evidence that the propelled rocket was manufactured in Iran, and Iran is known to be the country supplying them with arms and ammunition. So one would have asked, biblically, whence comest the rocket? So it's clear, between Israel and HEZBOLLAH and Iran, it's clear that HEZBOLLAH did. But I'm interested in their denial. Their denial goes to show that either we are afraid of Israel, or we are afraid of the United Nations, or we are afraid of if anything now happens.
All right.
I like that denial.
Let's go to the other side, because just like Honorable Frank said, Neville, that there could be a time where Benjamin Netanyahu will want to be diplomatic and not to go through the stretch of war. And just recently, we are also gathering reports where Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be withdrawing and even asking for a ceasefire or supporting a ceasefire that it has with the Hamas over Gaza. Now, don't you see this really coming in as regards the diplomatic moves that Benjamin Netanyahu is making, because he may not want to be overwhelmed looking at what he's got into his hands, like biting more than he could chew?
You see, the arguments that my co-discussor put up about HEZBOLLAH's denial of targeting young people.
The soccer pitch.
Yes. I do not subscribe to that argument. The reason is because I made mention of how HEZBOLLAH in 2010 said the gas field in Haifa belonged to Lebanon, whereas Haifa is in Israel. He was looking for Israel's trouble, was cutting Israel's trouble. In 2011, I made mention of what happened in Istanbul. In 2012, there was a bus attack in Bulgaria before the October 2023 attack by the same HEZBOLLAH. If you look at the battles and wars of HEZBOLLAH,
there's been history.
Yes. HEZBOLLAH is, let me just say, the Jihad Council of HEZBOLLAH is aimed at violence and war, fundamentalism. When you say they deny, and you believe that they were sincere in their denial, I don't want to believe, because the intelligence and information gathering capability of the Israeli Defense Forces cannot be undermined. You see Israel targeting hospitals in Gaza. And if you go under the ground of that hospital, you will see channels of Hamas, the places that they keep people that they kidnap or that they apprehend. Either they are Israelis or they are people that are from the West, where they keep them underground. And the channels, yes, and here you see a tower that is an hospital. So if anything happens and you target the hospital, they will say, oh, you are targeting hospital where civilians are going for treatment, it's not a military, blah, 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 blah. A person that is in conflict with you, who is criminally intelligent, will never agree with you that he is deliberately targeting you or is deliberately targeting a non-combatant region in your country.
So that will be a distraction strategy.
Yes, that's a distraction strategy. And I tell you the truth, that Benjamin Netanyahu that I know, he must retaliate. On the issue of looking for ceasefire, I believe the ceasefire is because of the election that is coming up in America and the posture yet unknown about the outcome of the election. So whether it's Kamala Harris of the Democrat that will win, whether it is Donald Trump that will win. But in any case, by my own assessment of American foreign policy does not change. There are always usually incremental changes, minor changes here and there. The stand of the Democrat against enemies of Israel is the same stand of the Republican against the enemies of Israel. Just the approach may be different. Like the other day, Donald Trump went to establish an embassy in Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the embassy of America was in Tel Aviv, in Israel. He brought it and said that the city should not be divided, that it should not be a two-state solution, even though he supported two-state solution, but that Jerusalem should not be a capital for Palestine and also be capital for Israel. So it is the same policy, only with maybe minor adjustments. I believe that Netanyahu is trying to scale down by supporting ceasefire, if only Hamas is ready to cooperate by releasing all the other detainees, American detainees. There are Americans that are in Hamas's detention. Whoever becomes president of America will not say those persons should remain in Hamas's detention. Whether it is Kamala Harris, whether it is Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, if it is Donald Trump that is elected president of America, Donald Trump will only make one statement on his inauguration day, and those detainees will be released, because he will just say one word. I don't want to preempt Donald Trump.
Okay, thank you.
If he's elected president.
Let's get your articulation on that, Honorable Frank, because we're beginning to see the withdrawal of the president from the presidential race, United States President Joe Biden from the presidential race, could also cause some implications and the decisions of Benjamin Netanyahu in having a ceasefire in Gaza. What do you think?
Yeah, simple diplomacy will require him to calm down a little bit, because he will need to study the body language of either of the two contestants. And as you said, I will agree with that. No matter who wins the presidential race, they will still have support in one way or the other for Israel, maybe in different approaches. So it's incumbent on Benjamin Netanyahu to now relax a bit, to know the direction of the tide. Otherwise, if he disregards the American election, it's a case of Oyo on your own. And from Oyo to go to Yobe, year of bad experience for Netanyahu. So that is, in a way, trying to orchestrate a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is the right thing to do in the right direction.
Okay.
Because if he does that, contrary to what I've said now, it might become a situation whereby who sent you? Or what you have done so far, don't you think is enough? Instead of people applauding you, you're not being reprimanded. No matter how rightly or wrongly you have approached the matter. So I like this position of the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and if he's able to carefully watch further, he will know the next step to take. But I think the direction of what is going on now is there should be a complete ceasefire. And that's the foundation upon which I also said earlier on that this attack from Hezbollah to Israel will not escalate beyond this. Because if you have a ceasefire with Hamas, and you're not starting a fresh war with Hezbollah, it means you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
So you don't cease from war and start a new war. What's the point ceasing? So I like the political diplomacy that Netanyahu has put in place. It shows that he is in charge of what he's doing.
Okay. You spoke earlier about the stretch of enemy boundaries surrounding Israel, looking at Hezbollah, you know, even Iran, you know, even getting ready to overrun Israel. Do you see the dexterity of Israel to be able to overcome these forces that seem to be coming strong against it?
You see, the way I see Israel is different from the way I believe other people see Israel. The strength of Israel, apart from the biblical perspective of being a God's people, the strength of Israel is derived from their intelligence capability. And this is the reason why America is always supporting Israel. Because those that drive the economy and the military intelligence of America, they trace they are members of the Jewish nation.
Oh.
Even though they are not born in Israel, they are people that are of Israeli descent. And America fears that if anything happens to Israel and they support that to happen, those people will crumble their whole country, economically and military-wise. So when America is taking a stand, people should understand why they stand. Now,
so do you mean that Israel is in a way strategic to the strength of the U.S.?
Yes. It's a core strategic location for America.
Okay.
Now, it is true that Israel is surrounded by enemies. Number one, Syria. Number two, Iran.
Lebanon.
In those days, Iraq. Then Lebanon. Lebanon is not an enemy to Israel per se. It is HEZBOLLAH and some other fundamentalist group that find Lebanon as a safe haven, that make Lebanon to be an enemy to Israel. And that was one of the reasons why Israel decided to occupy. Israel overran southern Lebanon and occupied that part of Lebanon for a very long time, because that place became a safe haven for criminal elements who were targeting Israel or wanted to annihilate Israel. Also, supporters of HEZBOLLAH are countries like North Korea,
Russia,
the Russian Federation, and some other countries. Now, I beg your pardon, Israel understudied their security network before striking. I hear, for instance, that Iran accused Israel of targeting their general some years ago, about 3 years now or so, and brought the general down because of the role the general was playing in tutoring radical elements from Hamas, from HEZBOLLAH, that were targeting Israel and Israel interests around the world. I hear from Iran that the president and prime minister that died the other day in a plane crash were brought down by Israel. So Israel, if it is true that Israel perpetrated these killings, it means that Israel is strategic. Because if you kill a leading general in a country, it will take time for a successor to replicate the activities of that general.
Exactly.
And the army or the armed forces will be disarrayed for fear of more attacks. And they now have to change their tactics so that what happened to that general will not happen to the ones that are surviving. Now, if a president and a foreign minister are killed in one aircraft, it's a message to that country that if the president can be killed, assume it is Israel that killed the president and the foreign minister of Iran that died recently. If it is true it is a message to the whole country that despite your nuclear capability and your security network, that you are priding yourself with in this region and in other part of the world, that you should be afraid of Israel, because when we sneeze like this, you need to catch cold. Then you go to Syria, you see how Israel has let me use the word, collaborated with other countries to wreak havoc on Syria. One of the reasons for this Syria war that has lasted for so long is not necessarily because of the domestic crisis in Syria. It is an attempt, a deliberate attempt to destabilize Syria, so that in the course of that destabilization, forces, fundamentalist groups like Hamas or Abu Nida or the Islamic State or HEZBOLLAH in this case, will not be able to organize themselves to say we want to attack Israel.
All right.
Now, the point that we are trying to make now in this discussion is that Israel is devastated by this attack. I know that if you kill one civilian in Israel, whether you are Hamas, whether you are HEZBOLLAH, whether you are Syria, whether you are Iran, Israel must retaliate in unequal proportion.
Okay.
So I also believe now that Israel will retaliate this one. Will retaliate this attack. And let's watch and see. I hope when this retaliation takes place, you will see call us here to come and discuss about that retaliation. But just now, as we speak, if HEZBOLLAH will be watching ITV and Israel will be watching ITV, my message to them is that it's better to judge than to war.
Okay.
Because even after the devastation, they will still come to the negotiation table to say, okay, grant us concession. Some of our prisoners are in your prison. Let us give you your own prisoners. And there's a prisoner swap. And so on and so forth. So we believe that this is that way that peace can return to our world.
Let's see the implications this could be having for the rest of the globe. Some have said, well, too much of this wars or fight or conflict, you know, Arab and all that, that has to do with even religious grounds. And then the U.S. coming in, the Palestinians, Iran. This could amount to an all-blown third world war. Do you see that imminent, Honorable Frank?
I don't see and I can't see it. because from the heading on the screen now.
Because we have that of Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah, it's a conflict.
See the effect it's having on the world?
Yeah, there's no conflict yet. It becomes a conflict. Israel, HEZBOLLAH, it becomes a conflict if Israel attempts to retaliate.
No, I'm not just looking at Israel.
Yes,
I'm looking at the enemies of Israel. I'm looking at the involvement of the U.S. because if U.S. is involved as it is, then it becomes an enemy of Iran.
Yes, U.S.
So
is not that
all of
involved.
this could also amount to some pressures that could deal a very big blow in the devastation.
Yeah, it's the escalation factor that I want to really address. It's not going to escalate.
Okay.
Because the posture of Benjamin Netanyahu is to be in good relationship with whosoever wins in U.S. And who is going to win is not so clear to any person. So he has to be at the kind of neutral position. So if in an attempt to round off the war conflict between Israel and Hamas is going to be catalyzed so that they quickly end up having a ceasefire, you don't set up that mechanism and start up another one.
Okay, but you also agree that whichever party wins, be it Democratic Party or Republican in the U.S., they still have the same page with the Israeli.
Any of them that wins may not have the same approach to assisting Israel in one way or the other. One way could be, if one of them wins, it could be, let's look for a way to remove Benjamin Netanyahu from power. For us to make us to support Israel. So Benjamin Netanyahu does not know the direction yet. So what he is doing is to play low. And in playing low, let's be a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. As that process is ongoing, it should not come back and start a new one. So at the global level, everything will just die down. It won't lead to any third world war. Because it can only be if he retaliates as he has opined. Yes. He may not want to do that because that will not help him in the long run. If he retaliates as he used to do, but this time around he tries to withdraw, then the whole world will wonder, Benji withdrew from retaliating. That means better days are ahead. Because he is doing that. That's a joker he has to be in good working relationship with the US. We know that the US will always help us. But there's a way we can take a position for us to be really helped. We can't say your helper is coming and you are creating problems on the way. So first, if Donald Trump wins, he's going to outrightly, openly speak against the war between Israel and Hamas.
Okay, we look forward to having a world that will embrace peace and
it's ongoing now.
all of these wars.
Yes.
Because if you look at what we've been having, the huge money, you know, the economic setback that we've been having, Russia and Ukraine, then we have the Hamas, the Gaza, and all of this.
China, Taiwan.
Yes, so this could also bring a huge setback to the world. So what do you say as we wrap up, Neville Obakedo, looking at a world that will bring about peace, global peace, as expected? Do you see that in the nearest future, looking at what we have at present?
Because we have come here to discuss HEZBOLLAH, I'd like to say that the world, it is possible in a way to have relative peace. But the kind of peace that we are envisaging is not that kind of peace. Number one,
with the presence of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, there have been battles that originally did not concern HEZBOLLAH. HEZBOLLAH went into the battle by itself. There was a battle in the Lebanese civil war. HEZBOLLAH was not part of the civil war, but it played a very significant role in that war. There's another war, Iran-Iraq war. HEZBOLLAH was not part of it, but it played a very crucial role in it. Then the Bosnia-Herzegovina war that took place in the defunct Yugoslavia. HEZBOLLAH left Lebanon and went to that war. Then the Syria civil war, the 2006 Lebanese war.
Thank you.
2008 Lebanese war.
Okay.
And then the war in Iraq between 2013 and 2017.
Okay. Okay.
The point we are trying to make about this world and how peace can be in this world. There can be no peace, total peace in the world. Because the reason is because human beings like to go and reap where they did not sow. And in that process, people rise up.
Just like the good book says, the heart of man is desperate and wicked.
And those
that could also
those who want to cause the shot in this world,
okay,
like as we define politics as those who get what, when, and how, according to our last the authoritative allocation of value as David Easton. Those who want to control the affairs of this world, it can be affairs of their country before they now relate with other countries.
All right, thank you.
They do it by subscribing to the use of power.
Thank you.
That power is in search of self-help.
Thank you, Neville.
It's in search of self-interest.
Thank you.
It's in search of wanting to bring others down.
Okay, you've articulated your points. Thank you for that, and I take that as your submission.
Thank you.
In a few seconds, let's get your narration as we conclude.
Yes, I really desire that Netanyahu will hear us right now. For him to maintain that posture of having a good working relationship between Israel and US, and for sake of global peace, however relative it might be, they shouldn't make any attempt to retaliate. Since the persons suspected to be involved have openly said that they were not.
Okay, but
so on what strength are you going to retaliate? He said, I did not. And you are still fighting me. What I did.
They will get the intelligence.
And to take an external organization to go and unravel that.
Okay.
But the Israeli personnel have observed that the leftover of those rockets were made from Iran.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Honorable Frank Amego, for taking our time to be on this conversation. And big thanks to you, Neville Obakedo. Top notch to you guys, and a beautiful day ahead of you.
Thank you.
Well, this is what we call it a round off on today's episode of International Forum. We'll see you on the next one. I am Philip Omo Gupon saying bye for now.